what I really want to be talking about here today is really this hybrid model that we created. So that's, I know this says a lot more, but we launched this at the end of last year, and it's really seen dramatic growth in both subscribers, but it's also opened up for some completely new revenue models. So just to kick it off here, and I know this is a very negative sounding slide, and I really ought to do one, which is more about the opportunities for television. But the message I want to get across here, because I'm not going to dwell on each of these individual factors, is that the changes that we're seeing pretty much all other European, also in the US market, is also affecting the Danish market. So we see these kind of structural changes, which is affecting both our distribution, but also it's affecting our ad space, because I mean, less people will be watching television through these big packages that we have from our ISPs, which also means that we'll be able to reach far fewer people on a traditional broadcast kind of environment. This change is happening, and it's probably even happening a bit faster in Denmark than it is in a lot of other markets. And part of that has to do with some of the quite unique things about the Danish market. One thing that really stands out, and I think that is different from most other broadcasting markets, is that Denmark has very little free-to-air TV. So the average Danish household, and I'm going to get back to that a bit later, pays about £30 a month just to watch television. So there's an incentive, and there's also a real tangible saving if you do make some changes and start converting into a streaming or an OTC kind of based setup. We actually kind of pushed this a bit, and TV2 launched a streaming service back in 2004, which was very innovative at the time. And I used to take this as a reference. I mean, this was back in the days when Netflix's method of distribution was still that they're going to send out a DVD, and you had to go back to the post office and mail it back to them afterwards. This was not a big deal back then for TV2. It was a supplement. No one in their right mind would think about potentially switching out their traditional broadcast TV signal and just opting for a streaming service. But it was a nice to have kind of feature. It was an add-on feature, and we had a few kind of pioneers who would adopt this. Where this really took off for us was when we, as I said, launched this hybrid model, which I again think we're just about the first ones who've done in the European market at the end of last year. And what I mean by hybrid model is that we've been able to take some of the features which is normally classified as a subscriber model, so SWOT, and we've combined that with the advertising model. The upside to us is that we've been able to actually create two new revenue streams, and I think this is going to be a key factor in the success of, in particular, our setup, is that we've been able to actually come out here with a product where the advertising help subsidize the content that you have to pay for. So quite literally, that has given us a much, much lower price point, which is very appealing, in particular to younger consumers. And I'll get back to that later as well. And the other part is that we've been able to come up with a targeted, addressable TV product that not only supplements television, because yes, it can do that, but it's also bringing in new advertisers to our TV business based on the fact that this one is built on data, this one is built on being addressable by nature. So we actually only operate with two products, and I think that is part of our success. It's pretty easy to see what you're getting here. And we have a video-on-demand product where you get access to all the content that we offer. So you can dip into our back catalog, and we've got a lot of stuff that we produced ourselves. We don't really have any kind of deals with the big producers. We don't carry big Hollywood blockbusters, that kind of stuff. So what people really want to get here is Danish-made, produced content. That would be fiction or drama, anything else. But it's unique to our service, and that's what you're going to get if you buy into the cheap service or the lesser expensive service. The more expensive option is to have both of that. So you'll get both the video-on-demand content, but you'll also get access to our 6 linear channels. And this is obviously our prime product, and this is the one that's going to mirror the experience you're going to get on television. So, I mean, for sports events, for big music events, you really want to have the live thing. So with the hybrid model, the thing that was changed here was that we added 4 different price points up here. So the consumer, when they're going to our service and are about to sign up for it, they can now choose for each one of these plans here if they want to have this with or without advertising. And there's a small hidden secret in here saying that if you talk about the live part, there's still going to be advertising in here no matter what they choose. The only difference is that for that part, we're going to do ad stitching. So we're replacing the traditional broadcast ad block, and we're putting in targeted advertising. So only if you choose the one with the video on demand for £10 a month, will you actually truly get an experience that's without advertising. But I think what we've really succeeded with here, also from a consumer point of view, is we've been able to actually address the value of advertising. We've been able to actually talk to our consumers about it and say, well, if it wasn't for those ads that you may like or dislike, the service would be more expensive. Now we can actually talk about this. It also says underneath there, when you sign up to it, we've been able to describe what is it that you sign up to when you sign up to advertising. So it says down here that if you talk about advertising on video on demand, it's going to be between 1 and 3 minutes worth of advertising as a pre-roll, so in front of the content, but we don't do any interruptions, we don't do any mid-rolls, but that is what you're getting. So I think this is in a very transparent and a very informed setup. The consumers know what they're getting and they know what they're paying for. And in any case, if they're unhappy about the current amount of advertising, it's fairly easy for them just to choose a different price plan. And again, part of the success of this has been because of the low price point. As I said before, when the average household is paying about £30 a month, to be able to get access to our content for about £5 a month, and that's about the price of a latte at Starbucks in Copenhagen, that is really opening up some interesting new perspectives for another group of consumers. Probably have to in that direction. So what I really want to share with you is actually the numbers, the insights, the data behind this, because I think that's probably even the more interesting piece here. And again, we've been about 1 year into this, and currently we have 400,000 subscribers to the service. This is not the hybrid model by itself, but this is making up about half of those number of subscribers. And I think if you put that into perspective of the Danish market, where we have about 2.6 million households, that is a really big number. For all practical purposes, this actually means that we are now our own second largest distributor. So there's one, obviously, an ISP that's a lot bigger, but we are number 2. And that is changing the entire dynamics of how we actually go in and talk about the distribution rights. If I had to sum up the learnings and also the value of this proposition in just one slide, it would actually be this one slide up here, because this shows the demographic layout of our traditional, linear, old-fashioned Flow TV business compared to the addressable TV business, which is the ad that we put on top of this hybrid model. And it's not that we have any problem with the demographic of those who watch television being, let's just say, 50 plus, because they also tend to be the ones who buy the most expensive cars, houses, travel, basically you name it. But what this goes hand in hand with our existing business is if you start to overlay that with the subscribers that we get here for our direct-to-consumer business. And just to put one big number up here, 62% are below the age of 40, and that is unprecedented. And this is important to us for 2 reasons. One, because it gives us hope that we will exist also in another 30 years' time. Otherwise, if you're just going to continue the trend of our traditional Flow TV business, those people would have died out by then. And we are a commercial public service channel, so it also means that we still have to rely on our ability to actually reach and address and inform the entire Danish community, and that helps us to do that. One thing I also want to point out here, and I kind of hint at this, saying that now we're getting younger consumers, but we're also getting very good at picking up cable cutters in the market. This is just based on a survey on those who selected specifically the cheap hybrid model, so the £5 a month model, and we asked them, so how do you watch television? 43% of them said, I don't have any subscription plan with a major ISP or broadcaster, I just buy directly, so direct to consumer, OTT, and that might be from the Danish suppliers, but that could also include obviously Netflix and other parties. But 43% of them are cable cutters, and those we would never see. And being an old ad man myself, obviously this has tremendous value if you look at this from an advertising point of view, because this is real, true net reach. No matter how much money you're going to put into the advertising business and how much you might consider putting it into our competitors' TV business, these are the ones you can only reach if you advertise with us and buy addressable TV. So it has tremendous value on top of your media plan. And then we don't underestimate the value that these people have made an informed choice about it. And I think this might be overstating it a bit, but we have people who actually truly appreciate that, yes, they do get advertising for a reason. And we can see that because obviously when we reach out to these people and say, yes, you've signed up now to a service where you've said yes to receiving advertising and you've made that on an informed kind of background, it's in our best interest and also in your best interest to get a bit more information about you as a person, to be able to serve more targeted and more relevant advertising, because that's quite literally what you kind of signed up to and what you expected. So we have this model where people are saying yes to advertising. It's an opt-in to advertising, and I think that has a lot of potential for the future. We still call the advertising product addressable television, and we do that for a reason, because our core and our DNA is still in television. So we like the notion that we are television, but with the added benefit that you can now address your target audience. So all the things that we've been able to say about television, all the key strength of television is something that we've been able to put into this. And I think also one thing I didn't put up here in a slide, but 75% of our consumption of addressable television is on a big screen anyway, which also sets us apart. So we have seen a lot of these charts about how much mobile is taken off as a video player and the platform where you consume video, but still 75% of our airtime is still going to be on a big screen for addressable TV. So all these things about, yes, it's real human beings, it's the big screen, obviously they've got sound on, it's a premium environment, you know what you're going to buy into, you know what you're going to get, they all apply to our addressable TV product. The only thing we have to talk to people is, well, on top of that, you can add data. You can add data to make it more informed, but you can also add data to make it more intelligent. And this has to do with also the changing ways in which we are booking this. I'll get back to that later. One way of doing that, which is changing also how to handle data, is obviously that we've opened up for this to be able to be bought through programmatic guaranteed. So again, all the advertisers, and this is where we're kind of dipping into new money, the money that would otherwise be spent with the likes of Facebook and YouTube. You can take that data and you can reapply it. You can take that logic and you can reapply it to buy targeted advertising on Digital. In all fairness, and again, this is about 1 year into that journey, I can safely say that about 90%, I didn't even look up the actual numbers, but we are talking about 90% plus of our campaigns this year, and we've run about 1,200 campaigns, have all been targeted towards traditional TV-like metrics. So, I mean, this has resonated really well with the traditional TV media buyer at an agency and the traditional TV advertiser, because they understand this notion that, well, if I buy into age and gender, and if I have a demographic that says men between the age of 20 and 50, well, I'm going to buy pretty much everything I can get from this addressable product between the age of 20 and 30, because that's where we are really strong. And then we're going to supplement that, or we're going to combine that with our Flow TV proposition and that offering. And as of next year, something like March 1st next year, we'll actually be able to actually show that real uplift, because we are now able to measure both the impressions and demographics that we serve on addressable television, and we're able to fuse that into a TV panel. So as an ad buy on television, you'll be able to overlay those two numbers and see what is the real net reach I'm getting from combining those two things, and how much money should I be investing into it. So again, that is a big driver of this addressable TV going hand in hand with traditional Flow TV. What we also can do, and this is where we start getting into these last 5% of campaigns here, is where we start actually tapping into our own data, the first-party data, the behavioral data. So what are people watching? When are they watching it? Who are they watching it with? And we see great value in having these kind of first-party data, the stuff that people really are passionate about, the stuff they care about, because that is also, at the end of the day, what advertisers care about. So when we can start having that conversation with them and saying, I mean, did you know that your core target audience spends half an hour a day watching that particular series or that particular show? This is where you want to be embedded. That's good contextual targeting. So that's the next stage of that. And then ultimately, and this is where we are with, I was about to say a handful of advertisers, it's probably a bit more than that, but that is the data part of it. And in particular, the thing about being able to fuse the data from, say, a CRM system into the advertising part, saying, well, I still do the big broad campaigns to announce that I have a new car coming up and to do the brand building for the future sales of cars. But if I have someone who've been to my homepage, if I have someone who's already signed up to my email, I can take that list out of it. I can do a negative list. I can focus on those who show intent to buy immediately. So we very often, and that was also one of the messages from the conference yesterday, was this is not an either or kind of proposition. It's not that you have to do television or digital. You can actually do both here. So we can do both the brand building, the long-term stuff, but we can also take the data, the intelligence, the insights to be able to hit those people who are about to walk in through the front door anyway. And in that way, it looks a lot more like your traditional plan for Google search. I mean, you take the lowest hanging fruit, and obviously you pile your branding on top of that. So I think in summary, what this has really allowed us to do is that we've been able to build a much more robust and future-proof kind of setup in terms of where we're going to get our revenue from. So being able to have this dual revenue, and even to the point where we can actually dial down a bit and say, okay, should people have fewer ads in front of that content, and should the advertisers pay a bit more for that, is something I can test and I can evaluate on almost on a daily level if I wanted to. We also still very much believe in the effect and the impact of flow television. So this is not, I mean, our message to the market is not going to be just because you can select and you can choose a small piece of that total audience, it's going to be that more effective because you can cut away all the waste. That's not how we're going to approach this. We're still going to approach this as television, but with the added benefit of data. And then, obviously, the demographics I talked about, but we also see this value and tremendous value in being able to talk to the advertisers about this data-driven approach to it. And these are some of the most interesting conversations we have right now, because we have this big ecosystem where we can tie together television, digital, mobile, all of that, and create this kind of consumer journey approach. How do we leverage different platforms, different touch points, different media to create the right consumer journey throughout television into call to action and getting people to buy that product or show up at a car dealership or whatever the objective is going to be. And if I had another half an hour, I would actually tell you about how this has also changed everything for us as a broadcaster, because this changes our scheduling, how we source content. We have to be available 52 weeks a year with new stuff, because we are now in a direct-to-consumer business, and we have to work with acquisition, we have to reduce churn, but that's a topic for an entirely different day. But I think this is a really interesting part of that business of being in a direct relationship with the consumer as well. And that was the end of it.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Christian.
Thank you.
So you mentioned it was 1 million customers that you have currently. How many of them stay on and how many of them churn? What's your typical churn rate?
I think, if you look at a full year, we actually churn about half of our base. And that's another thing that we've had to realize, that the good old model where you had an ISP and you did like a yearly deal, that was really good. You had far lower churn rates, and you obviously knew you had the money, but we are able to reduce that churn over time, and I think we have a monthly churn. I shouldn't say that, but it's a very confidential number, so they tell me. But I mean, we churn about half the base on a yearly level.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the room? That was fascinating. Thank you so much, Christian.
There's one.
What? Oh, sorry, I didn't see you.
I just wanted to ask, you said you have...
Sorry, there's a microphone if you don't mind just waiting. If you can tell us who you are.
Hi, Michael Rossman from MDux.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you have the model where you have live streams, but with no ads. So what do you do with ads that are in stream?
No, maybe I said that wrong. For all the live content packages, there's going to be ads in all of them. So that's where we do the ad stitching part. So we don't reduce the ad load or change anything. The only option that we actually offer where you can have no ads at all is the one where you buy the video on demand and pay the premium to avoid advertising. Otherwise, there is going to be ads in the live stream. But we sell that at double the rate of a regular TV ad impression. So.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Christian. That was fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you.